the strongest. Pretty much every shonen manga worth its weight has a character that is a monstrous powerhouse that has existed before even the events of the story, whose only purpose is to absolutely thrash the main cast of characters. For Dragon Ball, there's Frieza or Buu. For Naruto, there's Madara Uchiha. But my two favorite characters who represent this archetype are the two who will be fighting each other today. Yujiro Hanma, the strongest creature on Earth, the crystallization of strength, a man so powerful that his biggest rival is boredom itself. And Ryomen Sukuna, the king of curses, the strongest sorcerer in history, and the man who alone is the honored one. Both of these characters are known for their ability to suddenly whip out techniques that haven't been used in decades out of nowhere. But who would win between these absolute monsters? Well, it's closer than you might think. If you do like this kind of stuff, make sure to like and subscribe, follow my Twitter, and join my Discord. All the links down below. But with that out of the way, let's jump right in. For this video, as I've never actually talked about Baki scaling before, we'll begin with Yujiro, covering his strength, speed, and then his hacks and combat abilities. Now, the first insanely important thing that a lot of people get wrong about Baki is that just because it's a martial arts series set in something that resembles the real world, this does not mean that Yujiro and the other characters are comparable to real-life martial artists. The story goes out of its way to show that characters who would be considered the strongest fighters of the real world are so much weaker than Baki characters that they literally hold back from yawning and can defeat them without throwing an actual attack. With this misconception dealt with, how strong is Yujiro? If my statements before didn't make it clear, Yujiro is far and away the strongest character in the world of Baki, only being beaten by Baki himself on a technicality that had nothing to do with him outwardly being stronger or faster. And he's actually gotten stronger since then. This means that pretty much any feat or statement regarding a character's power or abilities would either be replicated or surpassed by Yujiro in power. However, thankfully, pretty much all of the best statements and feats are just from Yujiro himself, save for a handful. As a baseline, Yujiro's probably most iconic feat is when he stops an earthquake with a single punch. This feat is calculated to be about town level in power. This can be closer to city to mountain level depending on the magnitude. As crazy as this sounds, mountain level power for Yujiro is insanely consistent. Not once, not twice, but 3 separate times, Yujiro is stated to be more powerful than, or to be capable of surviving, any nuclear bomb. The most powerful nuclear bomb we know about as a society is the Tsar Bomba, which, if going off its original design, would have had a yield with a mountain-busting level of power. Now, keep in mind that this is a bomb from 1961, and that these statements are coming from real-life presidents literally more than 50 years later, with very likely even stronger and more efficient nuclear weapons. And yet the only way a nuke could maybe work is if Yujiro was somehow caught off guard by one. Other feats once again making consistent, with Pickle being able to indirectly survive this meteor impact. The only thing that happened to him was getting frozen without any actual damage to his body. While it did not hit him head on, we know that from his location in Colorado, the force from this impact will require mountain to maybe even island level durability to survive. Characters weaker than Yujiro are able to damage Pickle, so naturally Yujiro would scale over this level. As for speed, the feats and statements are just as, if not even more blatant than the ones for power. Yujiro is shown and stated casually capable of dodging lightning bolts, which is massively hypersonic plus in speed, which would be impressive enough if not for Baki's jab. Against Musashi, Baki throws a jab that he calls light speed. Now, by itself, this would probably not be enough to justify that speed scale. However, the direct chapter narration confirms that Baki's attack is light speed. Of course, by definition, Yujiro would scale above this. So, for stats, Yujiro would be anywhere from town to island level in attack potency, and be anywhere from massively hypersonic plus to faster than light. Now, for being a series about strong guys punching each other who know martial arts, Yujiro has far more abilities than you may think. As a baseline, Yujiro knows every martial art on Earth, including fictional martial arts that are literally kept secret from the rest of the world, meaning his skills extend to a completely unknown level beyond just martial arts mastery. And given how other martial arts in Baki involve using things like invisible swords and literal dinosaurs, this makes perfect sense. Beyond this, Yujiro is capable of instantly viewing his opponent's weaknesses and vital points, while also being able to fight without any of his senses. His senses are so strong that he was able to sense killer intent from literally across continents. Baki characters also weirdly have a soul and cell manipulation through sheer strength. As Yujiro is capable of flicking the souls out of people, Baki was able to do something similar, while also making the cells of strong fighters give up entirely, to the point where they outwardly refuse to attack him anymore. Now, Baki is one of the longest running mangas ever, so I'm sure I've missed some things, but I hope I've covered the important and relevant parts for this video. This is also all without covering his demon back, essentially Yujiro's equivalent of a Super Saiyan form that further increases his abilities, but unfortunately there isn't an exact multiplier for it. Still, Yujiro is one of the most skilled and powerful martial artists in all of fiction, and has certainly earned his title of the strongest in the Baki universe. But will the King of Curses end his boredom? Sukuna, the strongest sorcerer in history and the man who dominated both the Heian and modern era. There are numerous different versions of Sukuna to potentially use for any given versus matchup. There's the original Heian era Sukuna, the Sukuna of various fingers inhabiting Yuji's body, Sukuna in Megumi's body with the 10 Shadows technique, and the modern day true form Sukuna, who is at about 50% of his cursed energy and has access to the world cutting slash. For this video, I will be mostly talking about the generic Heian era Prime Sukuna, but I'll mention how the other form's hacks might interact with Yujiro later. For attack potency, Sukuna at even 3 fingers was already considered more powerful than the likes of the Disaster Curses Jogo and Mahito, with only their most powerful techniques like Maximum Meteor being able to potentially damage 15-finger Sukuna. With Heian era Sukuna being essentially synonymous with 20 fingers, it serves to reason that Sukuna is several times more powerful than the Disaster Curses with little effort. This would likely put his physical attacks and certainly his curse techniques at several times the power of these Disaster Spirits at full power. This would put Sukuna at anywhere from city to island level at best, as he would be stronger than the peak techniques used by these curses, which range between these two levels. As I talked about in my Gojo vs Godzilla video, while there are a handful of arguments for characters in JJK being stronger, I don't think they are consistent, nor are aptly substantiated within the story itself. As for speed, pretty much all of the good speed scaling in Jujutsu Kaisen comes from one character, Kashimo. Thankfully, Sukuna directly demonstrates objective superiority to him. Even in base, Kashimo is capable of launching bolts of electricity that other characters can at least partially react to. And when using his curse technique, he's able to manipulate electromagnetic waves to attack, which Sukuna potentially reacted to and dodged. Though it's incredibly ambiguous if this was the actual electromagnetic waves and if Sukuna actually reacted to it, or just preemptively aim dodged. Still, at worst, Sukuna is massively hypersonic plus and potentially faster than light. Sukuna's hacks are both resoundingly powerful but also surprisingly simple, though we don't know everything he can do even now. Sukuna's main ability is Cleave and Dismantle, an ability that attacks the opponent with slashes that only character with enhanced senses like Maki and Mahoraga seem capable of witnessing and sensing at all. Sukuna has 2 kinds of slashes, Cleave, which changes depending on its target's cursed energy, and Dismantle that works randomly on inanimate objects. With his domain expansion Malevolent Shrine, Sukuna creates a 200-meter area in which Cleave and Dismantle are constantly going off. He also has 3 more major offensive abilities, notably the Black Box, which is yet to be explained, but creates an arrow made of fire that was strong enough to kill a fire-based character like Jogo in a single attack. While in Megumi's form, Sukuna also has access to the 10 Shadows technique, and with this he can summon Mahoraga and create Agito. Agito kinda sucks, but Mahoraga is capable of adapting to any and all phenomena, and was even able to adapt to Gojo's Infinite Void. Finally, the current version of Sukuna has the World Slash, an ability that directly cuts space itself, which in a way completely ignores the opponent's durability. However, this ability does require a bit of preparation to actually use, but his multiple hands and mouths make this far easier to do. Finally, Sukuna has the second or third best reverse curse technique in the series, being able to survive without a heart and regrow from seemingly anything that isn't an instant kill. Of course, his healing needs cursed energy, but even the entire Jujutsu world while working together has not been able to wear him out, especially when he can hit a black flash and bring his energy back up. So, if even the strongest sorcerer of the modern era couldn't beat Sukuna, will he finally taste defeat at the hands of the strongest creature on Earth? When analyzing this matchup, there are a surprising amount of factors to take into account here. Firstly, when it comes to physical stats, the two of them are essentially identical. Their speed and attack potency fall within almost identical ranges, which means neither one of them is just outwardly blitzing or one-shotting the other one. When it comes to pure hand-to-hand fighting though, it's pretty clear that even with Sukuna's Heian form, his extra arms are not making up for the infinite gap in martial arts and combat skill ability between the two of them. However, something that can close this gap is of course Dismantle and Cleave. Now, if Maki is capable of seeing or at least sensing these attacks, then I see no reason why Yujiro, who has better perception feats and abilities than her, wouldn't also be able to do this. Now, just because he can see them does not mean he's going to not be hit, but again, these slashes would likely not one-shot Yujiro outright, though the same probably can't be said for the World Slash, which he truly has no counter for, along with Domain Expansion. So, if Sukuna has a win condition, does Yujiro? Well, he actually does, and it's equally as easy for him to get off. Like I mentioned before, attacks at Baki can impact and directly exorcise the souls out of people's bodies. Souls are incredibly important in JJK. As we've seen recently, Yuji can see the soul and his punches are awakening Megumi, which is drastically weakening Sukuna with every attack. And if his soul gets rattled enough, it will outright exorcise Sukuna. So ironically, the versions of Sukuna with the best hacks abilities are also the ones most vulnerable to being defeated by Yujiro. So deciding who wins is very dependent on which version of Sukuna. The original Heian era probably having the best chance. The fight would be extremely close either way, but Yujiro really has nothing for Domain Expansion, even if he had a general advantage in close quarters. However, any present-day Sukuna has the risk of Yujiro's punches straight up just knocking Sukuna out of control at any time, despite having more powerful abilities like Maharaga or the World-Cutting Slash. So, who wins? It depends on which versions, but either way, it's extremely close. However, I did say at the start that we were going to be using the generic Heian era Sukuna, so I'm going to give him a slight edge and a higher chance of winning. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. As always, if you disagree with my takes, let me know how I was wrong in the comments down below. See ya!